Quickie precursor and also a trigger warning. So last week marked 21 years since my father died, and he was 40. I'm officially older than he was. So my energy on the whole thing is like this ping pong ball back and forth between animosity and anger to love and sadness. It's kind of one of those things that you'd expect of a dynamic born of dysfunction. It's interesting what your adult brain perceives in hindsight versus your 18, 19, 20-year-old one. When he was alive, he was the guy that was scary 80% of the time and then hilarious and awesome the other 20. That is confusing to a kid, and you never knew which version you were going to get. After a person dies, you become a forensic pathologist into the anatomy of your relationship with that person and your every interaction. I don't know why, it just happens. Now at 41, I realize a lot of things I'd have never been able to see at the time. He was suffering from depression and possibly some other things, and he was self-medicating. And that makes me really sad. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't change what happened, but it makes me sad nonetheless. But I'm telling you this story because after this day, my life changed forever. Nothing and no one was the same. Be forewarned, I'm going to be talking about the day of his death straight from my recollection, so this is the kind of thing that's triggering for you. I'd give this video a pass. Hello. So yes, as the title states, my father died of a drug overdose, and it was sudden, it was traumatic, and yes, that very night I did go to a goth club. I think a lot of you who have grown up in the same situation may relate to this because it's very easy to become detached from traumatic events when you grow up in chaos, because it kind of gives you a baseline of just, it sets the bar higher, I think is what I'm trying to say. It sets the bar for your tolerance to crap much higher. So your baseline is way higher for things. So when something crazy like that happens, it's not such a whirlwind effect to where another person would have easily have broken down. One of the things I think about when I think about that day is I think of the fact that I went to a goth club that night. And one of the questions I ask myself pretty much every year is, would you do it again? Would you still go out to a goth night? Yes, I would. And it's that whole reasoning that made me want to talk about it, because I think that a lot of you may relate to this kind of mindset if you grew up in the same situation that I did. Not one, but both of my parents were addicts. And I didn't have much of a support system within my family. I had a very big family, but my father's side was a bit more present, but unfortunately my father's side also lived in another state. The thing that I think that a lot of you may relate to, if your parents are the black sheep of the family, what's going to end up happening is the resulting children are going to be black sheep by default. And you're going to kind of bear the unfortunate brunt of that, as in being excluded from family events, not having the same bonds with your cousins, family members as they form with each other, because you're always on the outside. Your parents are the black sheep. You're the children of the black sheep. Therefore, you are on the outs. So June 3rd, 2000 is the date and the year that it happened. It was a Friday night when I left to go to my boyfriend's house to sleep over. And the way my house was built was the front door was right in front of the stairs to go upstairs. So you walk in my house and there are the stairs that go upstairs that lead to the bedrooms, the bathroom, and then downstairs is like the living area. So as I'm walking out the front door, my father is going up the stairs, and it's funny how you remember the very last words a person ever speaks to you, because those words, it could be the most mundane or random sentence in the world, but you will pick that thing apart and dissect it, and that one sentence will become so much bigger in your mind than what it was ever intended to be. But although my father was known for saying random things, this is something that I will never forget, because it was a big one. And that's not just what I made it out to be. So as I'm walking out the door, he's walking up the stairs, and he said, "Remember, Angela, always follow your dreams." And I was like, that was random, but okay. So I walked out the door, went to my boyfriend's house. That was it. Went to bed and woke up the next morning very early from a phone call from my mother. Now, I didn't answer the phone. My boyfriend did. It was his landline because, no cell phones, the year's 2000. Not everybody had one. So it was the year 2000. So he answers the phone and it immediately wakes me up, and I'm watching him, and you know how you just get a sixth sense about something, and I knew it was my family. I knew. And he hangs up the phone and he looks at me and said, "Just go in your pajamas. We got to go now." Get in the car and we are booking it to my house, which is luckily less than 10 minutes away. So on the way there, he explains to me that my mother was hysterical and said that my father was blue. Those were her words. He's blue. And I said, why was she calling us? Call 911, call an ambulance. So in my mind, her saying he's blue, I'm imagining him standing up in the corner of the kitchen with his hand over his chest, having a heart attack, and he's turning blue. So I'm thinking, why is she calling us? He's having a heart attack. You need to call the police. Call 911, get a friggin' ambulance there. He's clearly having a heart attack. No, that's not at all what was going on. So we pull up, and my mother is outside and on the front porch, and I remember what she said to me. She was like, through hysterics, she said, "Angela, I think this is it." And I tried to go in the house, and as I tried to go past her to go in the house to run inside, a police officer met me at the door, and he ushered me outside. He didn't touch me. He's like, "No, you can't, don't go in there." And I said, what's going on? And he said, "It appears that he's dead." And I said, "What do you mean appears?" And I remember that because it was his chosen words. I said, "What do you mean appears?" And he said, "He's dead." And I was holding my purse. It was like a metal lunchbox kind of thing. And I just remember I just dropped it to the ground and I just sat where I was. That was really it. We couldn't go in the house for a little bit. And then the paramedics finally arrived. Then we were allowed in the house. Everybody was there. Fire trucks were on our street, and there was firemen in our house. There were police officers. The story that I got from my mother, what had happened was, now my father, being an addict, if you are related to an addict, if you've ever seen an addict or anyone on drugs, you're used to them falling asleep in the stupidest positions and in the dumbest places. It doesn't seem abnormal to you to, for example, find them asleep at a breakfast nook with their head in a plate of raviolis. Not abnormal. So when my mother, she woke up that morning, and my 2-year-old sister used to sleep in the bed with them. And when she'd woken up that morning, it was early, so all the light wasn't really coming into the windows. It was a bit dark. She picked up my sister, and she saw my father lying on his side of the bed, but on the floor in fetal position. She just chalked it up to him falling asleep in a stupid place. And she told me what she said. She said, "Fucking asshole, I hope his back hurts." So she went downstairs. She made a cup of coffee, was getting my little sister breakfast. Now, here's where the sort of light bulb moment went off in her head as it got a little bit later now. It's the sun's up now, and the lights are coming through the windows and everything. And she's downstairs. She's in the kitchen. And she doesn't hear him. And what I mean by that is my father had really bad sleep apnea. You could hear him outside snoring. It was like a lawnmower. And you would hear him, you'd hear that gasp whenever he would snore, and then he'd stop, and then he'd do that kind of gasp thing. She became painfully aware that she couldn't hear him. And that was not normal. Holding my sister, she went back up the stairs, and now, like I said, the light is pouring into the room, so it's bright in there. And there he is on the floor, blue, like just his whole body. He was no shirt on, pajama pants, so you could see his back, you could see his arms, you could see his face. He was blue. She immediately called 911, and then she called us. I remember my uncle was there, my mother's brother. We were sat in the living room, kind of looking out the front window, and they're carrying him down now. And they have him in this like greenish, kind of gray body bag. It's like leather, and he's on a stretcher, and they're taking him down the stairs. And this is the part that really freaked me out and made like me and my uncle just lose it. As they're taking him outside and they're walking him toward the truck, his head inside the body bag just wobbles and goes off the side of the stretcher, and they had to grab it and move it back on. And that's the part where it just, I don't know why, like that moment sticks out in my head. How could I go from that whole situation and then go to a goth club that night and dance? I can say with absolute certainty that if it wasn't for the goth scene, I do not know where I would have ended up. And growing up in the environment that I did, where there's drugs, there's abuse, there's chaos, there's instability, as a kid, you naturally are going to seek out those things that you're craving, those things that you're missing. You want to find that family. You want to find that stability. You want to be involved in a place that gets you away from that and somewhere where you feel safe. And for some kids, it can lead them down the wrong path, and they fall into the wrong crowd. And then in my case, I was very lucky. Music is a tool of escapism, and it always had been that for me, but it was also my medicine. And it's that way for a lot of people. You know, music is medicine. We listen to it when we're hurt. We listen to it when we're sad. We listen to it when we're happy. But music has always been that thing for me. And fortunately for myself, I found a sound that came equipped with an entire subculture that came along with it. And I am thankful. In many ways, the goth scene had saved me, because I don't know where I could have ended up. You know, they say that the children of addicts, you can go either way. You know, you can either go the way of the family, as in become an addict yourself, or you can go the other way, which is the way that I went, and you could be vehemently against. A lot of people looked at what I had done and they thought I was absolutely insane, because after they found out about my father's passing, they were like, when did that happen? And I said, well, it happened on Saturday. And they're like, but we saw you out on Saturday. And they thought that was absolutely bonkers. And I can understand that, because they didn't grow up the same way that I did. They never had to wonder what the hell they were going to come home to. And I get that. I understand that. And I have to often put myself in other people's shoes, because, you know, as a person who went through trauma, we have an issue with oversharing and knowing our boundaries, because sometimes we'll talk and talk and talk, and we'll say things that are disturbing to other people because there are things that we've gone through and they're normal to us because we went through it. But if this person never went through that kind of a situation, it could be very disturbing for them. So that's something I really have to watch my P's and Q's on. So I have to really be careful what I share, how I share it, and, you know, read the room. Luckily, I'm in my living room and I've read the room and it says it's fine. There's a place that your brain goes to when you lose someone close to you from addiction. And that place that it goes to is a place where all of the things that you went through with them as a result of their addiction, all of the pain, the frustration, the horrifying situations they put you in by way of their addiction, suddenly becomes erased. And it's replaced by feelings of guilt, where you are just frantically trying to comprehend the fact that you didn't do more. Why didn't I do more? I could have saved them. Why didn't I do more? And the fact of the matter is, you couldn't. Look at all those situations that they put you through. Look at all of those years. You think for 1 second that you didn't try to get them to stop? Of course you did. The problem is, you can't make people do something that they don't want to do. And in their minds, they're not the ones with the problem. You are. They have to want to do it for themselves. You can't pick them up and force them into a situation that they don't want to be in. Let's take my father, for example. 200 plus pound guy, 6 foot tall. He's sitting there telling you dead in the face that he's not doing drugs. He is 100% clean, not doing drugs at all. Meanwhile, there's paraphernalia everywhere, and as he's telling you this, he's falling asleep standing up. Are you going to pick this 200 plus 6 foot tall guy? Are you going to take him and put him in rehab when he doesn't want to go? have at it. This is what you really need to keep in your head, is that their passing is not your fault. There's nothing that you could have done to save them. We are the sum total of every decision that we have ever made. And we can't take all of their decisions and where that path led them and ultimately ended. We can't let that be our burden. That just sits on our shoulders for all eternity. You'll never get anywhere. You'll never process that grief. So I think back to 21 years ago when my father was taken out of the house in a body bag, and a couple of hours later, I was getting ready to go to a goth night. Would I do it again? Yeah, I would. Because they had always been my family before when I needed them. And at that moment in time, I really needed them again. So, yes,